Hi there, welcome to the first video of 2026 here at Tabletop Sagas. I'm Brett and, well, let's just dive right in, shall we? So in my last video of 25, I did a little bit of a review and wanted to talk about what I was going to do in the coming year. And specifically, I wanted to focus in on a big project, a project that I could run throughout the whole year, maybe into next year actually as well, and really do something really big that I can tell big stories with on the tabletop, which is what I want here at the channel. And so I did post that video. I did record it a little bit before then, so I've had about 2 weeks now where I've been thinking about this question. And unfortunately, there's not been a massive amount back from you, which is fine, you know, that is what it is. And I've been thinking, and I want to do something definitely big in black powder. I still have my 10mm medievals. I'm going to be doing something with them, but I want to do something in black powder as well, specifically. And 7 Years' War is just not doing it. Let's be honest, I know it, you know it, okay, fair enough. I'll keep that as a thing for me. But what else could I do? Well, the obvious one then is the old person's Napoleonics, the grand manner, as it were, for wargaming, the true everything. You know, I'm still learning it. This is going to be very much a case of it. If you want to see somebody who has a rudimentary idea of Napoleonics, trying out some Napoleonics, figuring it out, figuring out how the army compositions work, how the unit compositions work, the structures inside of the battalions, and how to place the models on the bases. If you want to see somebody wrestling with what on earth are facings and regimental colours, and which banners go on which side, and making sure that all those things are maybe not necessarily historically 100% accurate, but are my interpretation of how I can do it in a reasonably historically accurate way, and also in a way that's fun for me and practical for the gaming table. So if you want to see somebody starting into this massive topic from day dot, this is going to be the video series for you, I think. And Napoleonics, I do know is popular, so hopefully, you know, two birds, one stone, we can go through this together and I can really get to grips with why is it that Napoleonics has been so enduringly popular. This all said, I have already started to paint some of the miniatures. It's from a company called Turner Miniatures over on my mini factory. So these are all 3D prints, although the painting, the painting logic, the guide, the information and all that will apply to any miniatures. So if you do buy your miniatures rather than printing them, then, you know, it works perfectly fine as well. But let's switch over to the table. I'll show you how they look and we'll dive right in. So here they are. This is 6 battalions of line infantry that I've already gotten nice and painted up for my 10mm British force here. So this is based on the Waterloo, the 100 Days campaign that I'm going to be focusing my attention on, and I've managed to pull up, they're pretty easily accessible, the orders of battle for the Waterloo one, which is kind of one of the reasons why I decided to focus on it. And we've got the 1st Corps, the 2nd, and then going into the 3rd Division. So we've got, let's see, I can't remember them, but we've got them written on their bases here. So we've got the 30th Regiment Cambridgeshire, 2nd Battalion. We've then got the 69th Perthshire, the 33rd, I believe, yes, the West Yorkshire, Wellington's own division, I believe, or brigade or regiment. The phrasing's so confusing. I will get it eventually. Oh no, these are the 73rd Perthshire. So which ones are these? These are the 69th South Lincolnshire. And then we have the 5th and 8th Battalions for the King's German Legion. So 5th is over here, and then the 8th is over here, although these are painted the exact same. So for these are 6, and I do want at least, I think, another 2 line formations to make up 8, and then effectively 2 brigades. That'll stand me in good stead to then put in some cavalry, some artillery batteries, and I would say that the job's good and to start trying out some actual games for probably black powder, and then eventually building into General d'Armée 2. So this force I painted up really actually quite quickly and quite easily using some of my own techniques and sort of development that I've done with painting older 10mm figures that you've seen here on the channel. I have also borrowed very heavily from the great Sonic Sledgehammer. I will put a link to the video of his that I've used specifically in the comments and description down below. They are basic paints, really sort of bright, solid colors, then using his marine juice to get a nice contrast going on them without staining the raised bits too much. And then just really the difference between the battalions, as I understand it, at least in this era, is the lacing on like the hats and the fronts of the jackets, and then the facings, which is the collars and some of the models around the neck. Although, to be honest, a lot of the models, other than your NCOs and your potential battalion commanders, you're not actually at the skill going to see any of the collars very much, so that one is a little bit, not too much of an issue. I may be wrong on the lacing, by the way. As I understand it, the lacing means the lacing on the hats and the lacing on the jackets. I could be wrong. I'm still very much trying to figure out how Napoleonics work, how the uniforms. There seems to be no end of information. So if you do have any information and any tips, do let me know. But let's have a look at these in a little bit more detail, and we'll go through some of these bits and I'll talk through exactly what it is that I've been doing. Here we've got one of the stands for the 30th Regiment, the Cambridgeshire 2nd Battalion, which I've noted down on here, and I've put 13 to 1815, which is what, as I understand, is what their uniform is showing off here. The uniforms themselves as well, they are really actually quite simple to get together. I've started by printing these off in actual strips, so I can just paint one go and one go. And then it is just been a case of spraying them white, doing the red, doing the trousers in the grey, doing the guns, doing the blacks, and then doing the facings, and then whacking a bit of a wash on them to bring out the details. And so don't get me wrong, there's a lot more you could do on these, but that's where I've gotten to. And actually, I do think that, in terms of a tabletop standard, absolutely solid and ready to go for that. So yeah, it is really quick and easy. It's just a nice bright bold red, which I do love. That pop of red on the jackets does look really good. And then one of those which I'm confused at is the drummers. Now the drummers, Napoleonic drummers, I'm getting conflicting information about them. Some places seem to suggest that they actually reverse the colours. So they would have, the facings, the buff for these guys, or the sort of pale yellow, would be the main colour of the jacket, and then the red would be effectively the facings. Whereas then, obviously, everybody else is the other way around. But then maybe not as well at the same time. And I don't seem to really understand why one was chosen, why the other one might be chosen, when the difference was. Was it on a per regiment basis? Was there a general rule? Was there the sort of flank drummers might be one, but then the central command drummers and musicians might be another? I don't know for definite, to be perfectly honest. If you do have any ideas or any information on that, please let me know. I'm not saying that I'm definitely always going to follow it, but, having the information at least is nice. And so where could you go from these? So like I said, these have had a base and then a wash. And let's switch over to having a look at these guys, the 33rd, the 1st Yorkshire West Riding Battalion, which is, if I recall correctly, Wellington's regiment. These, I say they've had a base, they've had a wash, they do look really solid. And I think that, for gaming pieces, they are ready to go. Although, certainly going back in with that bright vermilion that I've got from Vallejo to punch up the arms a little bit, going back in and retouching up the white. White, obviously, when you've done a wash is always tricky, and I do think that it could be a little bit brighter. And then I have as I always do, I have matte varnished these. So going back in with that silver and maybe a brass to pick out some of the metals to get them shining again. Again, solid options that could take not too long. And then on the back, so if we have a look at here, so I have painted the ammo bag and then the backpack, and then there's the greatcoat rolled up on top, and then the helmet. I painted just all that black, just literally brush all the way up, done. So I do think that that could be picked out a little bit better, separate out, you know, maybe just give a grey onto the greatcoats or something like that, and then using a white to pick out the straps on there. So there is a lot of little bits of work that you could do, and you know, I thought about doing it, but I got them to this point. I was thinking that, you know what, I'll see what they look like, and then I decided, actually, you know what, I'm happy with them as is. I think that they do look good enough for government work, as the saying sometimes goes, and they certainly do look good enough for getting on the table. And here we've got the, oh, they're upside down, the 69th South Lincolnshire 2nd Battalion. These are, again, very similar, although these ones have gold lacing, was the information that I'd found. So as you can see, these guys on the front here, I've painted the lacing on their jackets, and I've also painted the lacing on the top of their hats. I'm not 100% sure whether that is completely correct. Again, if anybody does know, let me know down in the comments. That would be very much appreciated. But I think that that's all of the lacing that they're talking about. And so that's what I've painted up. And you know what? Even if it isn't 100% right, it does still look pretty good. I am trying to use a couple of different sources to get that information as well. So there is obviously Osprey Publishing books, which they do have an excellent selection of the Napoleonic era. And then there is a brilliant website called NapoleonGuide.com, I think it is. I'll put it down in the description as well. It is a little bit of an older and very clearly a sort of fan-made website, but it is at the same time an excellent source of a load of information. And if you are looking into this era, I definitely would recommend checking it out. Well, for one thing, it's free, and you know, it does have some solid information. And then just quickly to round out these ones, here is the 73rd Perthshire Regiment, who I did read originally were a Highland regiment. Quite interesting though, lost their Highland status. So I have just painted them as standard infantry. I possibly could have painted them as printed off some Highland guys with trousers and used them instead. But I think that this looks more correct from the images that I'm seeing. That's one of the other things I'm finding a little bit difficult with. You know, you can Google all these regiments and, you know, you can put into Google search or any other search, 73rd Perthshire, 1815, and it will come up with a load of images, but I am always slightly concerned as to whether they actually are what they say they are, because all of the regiments by this point are getting increasingly standardized, and it is just those facings that are really kind of different and the lacing. So I do wonder whether somebody has maybe gotten confused and says it's one thing when actually it isn't. Now, for the basing, I have gone with my usual that I did decide to do for 10mm. It's been serving me in good stead since the very beginning, so that's just your Geek Gaming Scenics small base ready range. They are as well on 25 by 50mm bases. I did and ah a little bit about what scale to bases to put them on. I was thinking about 40mm bases, so take off a centimetre, but I don't know. 12, like 6 on each base, and it didn't quite look right. I have some 40 by 40s and some 40 by 20s that I tested. The 40 by 20, there wasn't quite enough room on the base to put the two lines on, and I find it a little bit difficult to get in and get the basing and not hit the models on smaller bases, particularly in line stuff like this, and I'm not too bothered about that little bit of extra frontage. I did also have the thought that extra front, like that sort of half a centimetre or so, I can potentially do some battalions as firing or charging forward. So there are some options that I could do there. So that extra half a centimetre it just gives me the option, if I do get bored of just having a load of guys marching in the future, you know, I can do something about that. So yeah, in the end I did settle on these 50 by 25s. I have a load because of Blitzkrieg Commander from Pendragon, so that's their World War II game. So I was like, you know what, I've got a load of them. I'm having a little bit of doing some other things rather than doing the Blitzkrieg Commander at the minute. I've got a load of stuff already for it. So I was like, you know what, let's give that a go. And actually, I do think that I am pretty happy with how it looks. One of the things as well I am particularly happy with of how I've put these together. Now, some people might ask, why did I not decide to go with just the Waterloo set from Warlord Games? Which I certainly could have and wouldn't have been a wrong decision. They're, what, 13.5, 15mm models and all that. One of the problems, however, I do have is that they place their strips centrally, which really does kind of bug me, because you end up getting, if you imagine, almost a gap almost feels like that between the two halves of the battalion, which always looks really weird to me. Or even if you know, it was like that, there's the gap in the middle. So what I have done is I have pushed everything over a little bit, and so that when these are together, they do look really tight shoulder to shoulder, even at that seam between the two halves of the battalion, which I do think is a really good look, and I definitely find I prefer. These ones, the King's German Legion, you will notice that the colour of the base does look a little bit different. That's just basically because I haven't sealed them yet. I am going to be doing that later this afternoon, but for the case of this video, I'm counting them as good enough and done for now. So yeah, so that's really where the models are at the minute. But as I mentioned earlier on, I think I want to paint at least another 2 battalions for these. I am going to be focusing on that King's German Legion brigade, so I do need 2 light battalions. Now, this is something that I'm not sure on, and if anybody does have any information, I would welcome any comment. It stays in the order of battle that there was the 5th, the 8th, and then 2 of the light battalions from the King's German Legion. Were those light battalions in open order and skirmishing alongside these guys, or were they also formed into close order and fighting like line infantry at the Battle of Waterloo? I do know that light infantry could do both, so I'm not too sure. I can't find any definitive information as to whether that was the case, one way or the other. What I could do, however, is I could paint up 2 battalions and then also paint up a load of skirmishing bases as well. So I've got both options if I did want to. That is probably, I think, how I might well go. And then once I've done that, I then want to probably, you know, I've got 8 of these, maybe 2 units of cavalry and a cannon battery or an artillery battery if you prefer. I think that'll be 11 units to put into a force, which I think is a good amount. Obviously, then I do need to do my 3 commanders and probably a general or something, but it does give me a solid base, and then look at the obvious opponent for these, which has to be the French. Well, there we go. Those are the first 6 battalions of my models. I know technically, okay, I'm missing flags. That's going to be covered, basically. I'm going to do a separate video specifically on flags, but I haven't done that yet because, well, something's got to be first, and also because I'm a little bit of a cheapskate, I guess, because I don't want to do, you know, print off 1 battalion's worth of flags or 2 battalions worth of flags. I want to get, you know, 6, 8, however many units all sorted and ready to go, and then print them all off on 1 page to save on paper a little bit and do them all in one big bulk. So there's still that to do. There's the 2 which still need their basing material setting for the King's German Legion, but you know what, small detail, that'll be done after this video later on this evening. So yeah, there's 6 battalions already started. It's the thing that I do love about 10mm. Just comes together so quickly, and you can do these really big armies, and it does feel like an achievable project, you know? I want to go, what, 6 Next, I'm going to do certainly the light battalions for the King's German Legion, then possibly do a Hanoverian division, so get me 3 divisions of infantry, then do some cavalry, an artillery battery, and we're good to go for a decent-sized English, or British I should maybe say, or Anglo-Allied, I think is a term I've seen thrown around quite a lot. So an Anglo-Allied force that we can then go with, and then I can obviously start and looking at the Napoleon army as well, so the Frenchies. If you do want to see how that and this entire project is going, then do be sure to hit that subscribe button. My goal is I'm going to do at least 1 Napoleonic video every single month. It'll probably be the first video of each month, so do be sure to keep your eyes out for those. Best way to do that is by hitting that subscribe button. If you are interested in this project as well, do let me know down in the comments below. That does really help the channel and really help boost its visibility for other people to come and check it out as well here. I am hoping to really do a lot this year with the channel. So a lot of exciting things coming your way soon. As always though, I've been Brett here at Tabletop Sagas. Thank you very much for watching today, and I'll see you in the next video.